Today's project is a compost tumbler. So my girlfriend tagged me with a compost tumbler picture in Facebook and said I want one of these. So the next weekend I delivered one of those. And so I'll walk you through how I built it. Started with some supplies. So I got some frame wood, which was some posts that I bought from the big box store. A center pole, which is just a PVC pipe, schedule 40, so it's thicker. A barrel, which is just a food barrel I picked up off of Craigslist. Some hinges and latches to hold the flap in place. And then some screws, which probably the most important part of this thing. They were 2.5-inch exterior grade construction screws. Tools, I had a saw. I used both a manual saw and a power saw. I had a chisel and a hammer that I used to cut some post notches. A drill and a screwdriver, which I just used the power drill. I used a bit that went with the screws, and then also I needed a 1/4-inch bit to drill some air holes. I started by cutting all the lumber to length. Got it to the length I wanted it. I wanted it comfortable to roll the barrel around and to put a wheelbarrow underneath. Then I cut out the notches to connect the end posts. And so I used a compound miter saw here sliding miter saw to remove most of the waste. And then I went over and grabbed a workbench that had a vise on it and used that to knock out all the cutout waste and get a nice flat surface so that the poles would fit together. And I didn't notch the flat poles that go on the ground. I just notched the poles on the top. Had to notch both ends, and went ahead and removed all this waste. Got it nice and flat. This vise table was really cool. Worked out really well. I've used it for a lot of projects. On this project, it does a good job of keeping the pole up straight. I think the pole was actually touching the ground, so that way it didn't have any problems with getting knocked down, but the bench did a good job keeping it upright. And then this bench actually has a footstool on it, and so I could put my foot on there and hold everything stable so it didn't move around at all. And takes a little bit to knock out some of this waste, but chisel makes pretty quick work of it. And I just used the biggest chisel I had. I think it was a 1-inch chisel. Last cut didn't go all the way through, so I had to do the cut with the chisel instead of just being able to knock out the waste. So I think on the other end I'll learn my lesson there and go all the way through to the back of the saw when cutting out the waste. I did measure it for just a typical wheelbarrow. So I just measured the height out and said, okay, what's the height of this wheelbarrow plus half the diameter of the barrel. And that gave me the height that I wanted those posts to be at. I think I added an extra inch or two just to give myself some extra clearance. And then when doing the holes for the screw, you always want to put 2 holes in. 1 screw is a pivot point, 2 will secure it. And this is where I wish I had an extra set of hands, because this pole is a little wobbly until you get some screws in it. So it would have been nice to have somebody to kind of hold the pole in place so I didn't have to try to hold and screw at the same time. Probably should have just left the whole thing in the vise bench, so that I didn't have to hold it myself. But once you get the first screw in, everything from there on out pretty easy. And the screws are self-tapping, but I went ahead and drilled a hole anyway just because it's so close to the ends. I thought it might split. Plus sometimes it's this pressure treated wood, it's still a little bit wet, so it's always a good idea to have a hole pre-drilled. Then I went and knocked out both ends of the next pole, and this one a lot smoother because when I did my cut, I did it all the way to the inside edge and didn't have that little extra piece hanging on. And I sped this up 4 times, so I think it probably took about 20 minutes to do each end of the pole here. And that 20 minutes is to cut out the waste and to do the chiseling. Alright, now I put that on, and then next cut out the flap. So I accidentally left the back end of the plastic connected. I also bought a piano hinge just in case, but I figured with the rust and stuff it'd probably be best just to use the plastic. I put a knob on here to make it easier to pull this up, and then I just used a bolt latch to hold everything closed when you spin it around so that the compost doesn't fly all over your feet. And then I attached some pickets, some fence pickets to the end to brace up the corners. And now it's nice and stable, and that's the compost bin. Thanks for watching the video.